Hey everyone, welcome back to another YouTube video. So happy to have you. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Jessica, and we are the Certified Occupational Therapy Assistants with Harkla. Today we're going to give you 6 strategies for ADHD.
So ADHD, it has always been a term that is thrown out. It's something that's on everyone's radar all the time. Today's video, we're going to break down not necessarily what ADHD is, but we're going to share some strategies, some things to rule out, just a little bit of a different perspective from our experience working with children with ADHD, ADD. We're gonna say just ADHD, but just know that we mean the whole umbrella term here.
We also have several really great podcast episodes on this topic. We'll link them in the description. The podcast is All Things Sensory Podcast. You can find it on all the different podcast platforms. Just search for it and then search for ADHD, and all of the episodes that we have will come up. And we really dive into what ADHD is in those episodes. We're not gonna really focus on that here. Just know that ADHD is an executive functioning disorder.
So let's say you are identifying some potential ADHD type symptoms in either yourself or your child. A few things to, I would say, rule out or look into or explore or research just to make sure that you're not, missing some of these other challenges that are often co-occurring with ADHD. So
you want the whole picture, right?
Always,
that's the goal,
absolutely.
Is you want to look at the whole picture, not
Yes.
just one piece.
Yes. So the first one is sensory processing disorder. Of course, we're going to throw that out there because we absolutely love the sensory system. But there is a lot of research showing the connection between ADHD, sensory processing challenges, sensory over-responsivity, under-responsivity, seeking, craving, whatever term you're going to call it. There is definitely a connection, and we'll chat a little bit about that more here in a minute. But identifying those sensory concerns, ruling out specific sensory challenges, throwing in a sensory diet. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about strategies later. Sensory, rule out sensory challenges.
Just take a look at it. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The other one that you want to look at are primitive reflexes. We have a lot of really great content on primitive reflexes that you can also check out. We'll link it all in the description. But oftentimes retained primitive reflexes can look like ADHD. It can look like inattention or hyperactivity when really it's a retained primitive reflex that's stuck in the body that's causing the child to not be able to have those higher functioning skills.
The next one to look at is sleep. How is the child's sleep hygiene? Are they going to bed at a decent hour? Are they waking up consistently throughout the night? Do they have a restless sleep? Are they waking up too early? Are they getting too much sleep? Looking at the sleep quality is a big factor when you're looking at ADHD as well.
I just think it's important to take a look at that for yourself as well. Is how do you feel when you don't get enough good quality sleep? You're probably tired throughout the day. You can't pay attention. Maybe you're irritable. Same thing with ADHD. You see those same symptoms there, but could it be more sleep related?
It's all connected.
The next one is to take a look at nutrition. What we're finding is that different types of food affect us in different ways. Some foods make us feel really, really good and alert and energetic. Some foods make us feel really low energy, lethargic, we can't focus. So take a look at the nutrition, work with a functional medicine doctor, holistic doctor, and look for some nutritional deficiencies that might be happening because of different food choices.
I will say one thing to eliminate from your diet completely, or your child's diet, is food dye, because there is a connection between those food dyes like red 40, blue 30, I don't actually know the numbers, but red, blue, yellow,
red, blue.
all of the food dye that you wouldn't necessarily think is in food, it's hidden in there, unfortunately, and that can actually cause hyperactivity in children and adults as well. So I would say if you're gonna make a change, cut out food dye if you haven't already.
Totally.
Okay, next one to rule out is breathing. Mouth breathing, sleep disordered breathing, sleep apnea, tongue ties, all of that can connect to ADHD type symptoms as well. Again, it goes back to sleep, but also it connects to how the body is functioning as a whole unit. And so finding either a pediatric dentist or an airway specialist, a myofunctional therapist to look into, that can be really helpful in your ADHD journey as well. So we did kind of mention earlier about some of the research that we found that we're going to quick paraphrase. We'll put it in the description below as well in the link, so if you want to check those out. But basically the first one talks about the connection between sensory sensitivity and ADHD in the general population. And the study found the connection between hyposensitivity, hypersensitivity, so that over-under responsiveness to sensory input has a connection between ADHD. So definitely look into that. That's why we mentioned first thing, sensory concerns.
And we do have a YouTube video and some podcast episodes that dive more into sensory processing disorder, what sensory over-responsive is, what sensory under-responsive is. So if those are new to you, definitely dive into our other resources to learn more.
Another article that we found talks about sleep disordered breathing and removing adenoids. Now, this is something to look into with an ENT, but the research basically says that the ADHD type symptoms were improved after having the adenoids removed. You can read about it if you're interested in it, but it's definitely just something that we want to put a little bug in your ear. We're not saying this is the cause. This is just something to look into and do a little more research about.
Let's jump into 6 strategies for ADHD. Now, the strategies we're going to talk about, you can use with your child, your clients, your students. You can even use them with yourself if you're an adult watching this video. These strategies could be modified for any age.
So if you or your clients or your child are struggling with some of these ADHD symptoms or ADHD itself, we want to share these strategies that can help improve just overall daily functioning. As occupational therapy assistants, it's always our goal to help the child function at their best. So first one is to address the executive functioning skills. So like Jessica mentioned already, ADHD is an executive dysfunction disorder. So making sure that we are addressing these executive functions. How many times can I say executive functioning in one sentence?
At least 3 more times.
So things like using timers, using visual aids, using visual schedules can be really helpful.
Yeah, oftentimes executive functioning challenges show up in daily routine tasks. So things like getting dressed, meal prepping, brushing your teeth, being able to pack up everything for school or work. You're losing track of time, you're forgetting things, you don't know what to do next. All of that requires good executive functioning skills, and if there's challenges there, you want to be able to use visual lists or visual schedules of what to do, when to do it. Time block is very helpful as well, and then using visual timers or like a stopwatch to know how long something is taking, reminders on your phone or your tablet or sticky notes. Like there's a lot of different ways to do it, but those challenges are real, and so using these strategies can really help improve success and just overall happiness with doing those daily life tasks.
The second one is to improve overall health. Now, I know that sounds cliche.
Very generic.
Yes, but stick with us here. These are things like working with the functional medicine doctor, getting blood work done, identifying nutritional deficiencies, addressing sleep hygiene, anywhere from seeing a new doctor to using a weighted blanket or a Lycra sheet, compression sheet at night to help improve sleep, just removing toxins from your life,
getting outside more,
fresh air. I mean, just looking at health as a holistic situation. It's so general, but honestly, it can make a huge, huge impact.
Number 3 is to include more sensory input into the daily routine. You can do this with sensory diets, and there's a lot of different sensory activities that you can include. We talk about sensory diets, we talk about meeting the sensory threshold in some other videos that we have, but ultimately you want to be meeting the sensory needs of the child or yourself. You want to include more heavy work into your day when you're feeling anxious or overloaded by bit too much. And more sensory input is really going to help just regulate your nervous system.
Another thing to look into is neurotransmitters. And so we're not going to go into a ton of the deep dive science here, but there are some basic activities that you can do to ensure optimal neurotransmitter function. Things like yoga, sunlight, essential oils, calming vestibular input, even like HIIT exercises, those high intensity interval exercises.
Get your heart rate going.
Just getting outside, using those multi-sensory processing activities to really make sure that those neurotransmitters are functioning optimally.
Now, what's really great is that we have videos and podcast episodes on every single one of the 8 sensory systems. So if you're not sure what sensory system to look at or what activities to incorporate to address each sensory system, make sure you check out all of our other videos because there's a lot that you can do. And maybe that sounds overwhelming, especially if you yourself are struggling with ADHD. That probably sounds overwhelming, but just start with one, maybe one that you enjoy. Maybe you really love deep pressure. So make sure you check out our information on proprioception because proprioception is very calming and regulating, and it's that deep pressure that helps you feel good.
I feel like we've given way more strategies, but we're honestly only on number 4 here. Number 4.3796.
Oh gosh.
is primitive reflexes. Now we have a ton of information. Again, we're here just trying to overwhelm you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But we have a ton of information on primitive reflexes. We're super passionate about it, but there are some reflexes that show up as ADHD type symptoms, ants in the pants, can't sit still, can't focus. So ruling out those reflexes, getting them either formally tested or doing a screening of them, and then working towards integrating those can be super impactful.
And it's interesting because, we're talking mostly about children here, but if you're an adult with ADHD, it would be important to look at those retained primitive reflexes as well because they could be stuck from when you were an infant and throughout your whole life causing these different challenges. We're not saying that it's a guarantee or that it's a for sure thing. We're just saying it could be there. Number 5 is to set up some type of positive reward system. What we found with children specifically, but also I think for adults, like for me even, is that a positive reward to look forward to after completing something is way more effective than a negative consequence. So
I'm just thinking about my own
or
my own
better?
positive reinforcements that I do after I get through the end of the day.
What do you do?
I have some true fruit.
Oh, exactly. Okay,
Yes,
so
a little
you
chocolate, a little
use
treat
food
at the end of the
We usually recommend not to use food, or at least not to start with, but it's an option. For young children, doing some type of sticker chart and having a reward at the end is great. You can have a toy bin full of toys, and that toy bin stays put away in the closet, out of sight, out of mind. But once the child has gotten all the way through the sticker chart for brushing their teeth every day, getting dressed every day, doing those daily activities that are really hard for them. And of course, you've implemented visual schedules and sensory input to help increase the success. But they've used that sticker chart and they're all the way through and they get to take that toy bin down and pick out a toy to play with. It's a positive reward. They see that their hard work paid off and they get some type of positive reward at the end, and it's very motivating.
How many times can you say positive in one sentence?
We're gonna have to count all of our words in this.
If you're not super excited about, toys offering that extrinsic motivation, then you could also work on more of that intrinsic motivation too, and talking about how when they complete these activities, how it makes them feel and how they are proud of themselves and what successful next step they can work on. It depends on the child, it depends on the person as well, but it's definitely something to look into if you're not a big fan of those external rewards. So focusing on that intrinsic motivation, it can be really helpful for some kids.
And again, just keeping in mind that teaching that positive reward can be more beneficial than the negative consequences.
Yes. The last tip we have for you today, this is, I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's definitely one that I use daily.
I do too.
Reducing visual input. Now, we've already explained some research with sensory over-responsivity, right? So that means you're over-responsive or you're sensitive to sensory input. Your visual system is something that you can be sensitive to. So things like clutter all over the house, toys all over the house, dishes all over the counter. I'm basically just talking about my own house right now.
The dishes in the kitchen is something that drives me crazy.
Yes. I stepped on a Lego the other day. Like literally the worst thing that you can step on. That's what I stepped on.
So true.
So reducing that information that your body has to process and interpret and modulate can be really helpful for improving attention, organization, just your quality of life. I'm telling you this because it helps me so much. It's a strategy that is like a game changer. Just set a timer for 10 minutes and tidy up your living space at the end of the day. It'll help.
Well, and there is that one Instagram account that you followed, so I started following it. Do you remember what it is?
The Barta House.
Yes.
Shout out, Heather.
And she talks about getting rid of the things that you don't actually need in your house and decreasing that clutter and that visual overload to just have a more calm environment. And I love that. And I think it's such a great strategy for everyone, but also specifically for anyone struggling with ADHD. If your home is cluttered, it's such a great strategy to just, like Rachel said, set a timer, maybe not 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. 10 minutes sounds like a long time.
Well, it depends on how messy your house is.
But you start small, maybe start small, right? Start with 5 minutes a day and declutter and put things away out of sight, out of mind, and see if a more simple environment is helpful.
That was a lot of information. Hopefully you can take one little bite-sized cookie from this video and implement it.
Make sure you're following us on Instagram at Harkla_family, as well as at All Things Sensory Podcast. Make sure you listen to the podcast and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yep, thank you so much for being here today. We will see you next week. How's our hair? How's my baby hair? Can you see my halo? Really? I guess I don't look at your hair either. I just look at your beautiful eyes. Oh.